Okay, so welcome to Spin State Live. I am really pleased to be joined by Philip Brady. So today is about how we show up when it matters, not when things are easy, not when we're in control, but when the pressure is real. And Philip's work with leaders is at that edge where performance, emotion, and physiology all meet. So, Philip, it's great to have you on. Thank you so much for your time.
Likewise.
So we'll just get straight into the first question then. So when you think about leadership under pressure, what do most people misunderstand about what's really going on?
And maybe just as well, like, thanks for having me on. Kind of cool to dig into these things and have a conversation about it. So, so when I was thinking about this, I think one of the things people misunderstand is actually whether we have a choice or not. Did we choose the pressure or not? Because when pressure is given to us and we feel we don't have the choice, we experience it very differently. And I think we experience it more like suffering rather than kind of useful stretch or learning or growth or challenge, or even the language we use to describe it is different. The other thing that I think we misunderstand is that we talk about the presentation of it in the mind and we forget how it actually feels as an experience in the body. And then also, the other misunderstanding is that pressure is sometimes good. It's also a privilege. So pressure can actually improve our performance if we can like regulate our response to it. But it can also be a privilege that shows that we're working on something that's meaningful and matters and makes a difference or an impact. So I think
Mhm.
there's some of the kind of common things. Even the language around pressure, is it stretch or a learning opportunity? That feels very different. So I think they're kind of some of the kind of things, but as well, I think the biggest one is whether we choose it or not. If we choose the challenge, I think our experience of it changes completely because we're more accepting of it rather than resisting whoever gave us the pressure or how annoying our clients are or any of those kind of things. Like that's very different as an
Mhm.
experience.
Yeah, and it really aligns. Like, there's many times we have had some really kind of great conversations about this kind of stuff, and what I'm learning on this journey, Philip, is that I mean, my kind of niche is that whole adult development, that vertical development piece, which what I'm learning is it's what mindset do you default to when you're under pressure?
Mm,
And you mean 65% of adults do not develop beyond that fifth stage of child development, which is people who seek safety, comfort, and belonging. 35% of adults then vertically develop to a mindset of how can I stand out, look good, and get ahead, which only leaves 1% of the population that has a mindset of how can I elevate others, how can I contribute more. Um, so it's really starting to shine a light on understanding that autopilot which you default to when you're under pressure. So, what
mm.
actually changes in a leader when the pressure hits, Philip, from your perspective?
Yeah, and like I think about this, I always just take it back to like first principles. If we go to your heart as a valve, it opens and closes, and that's how I make sense of this. Under pressure, our heart closes somewhat, so we have less capacity, less energy. Our mind literally can't go to places that are wider than our survival or safety or belonging, like you've said.
Mhm.
Our emotional range will narrow. So we'll only have access to emotions that are like anger, frustration, despair, sadness, depression, anxiety, any of those kind of things. So even our emotional range is different. Our mind like plays out cognitive distortions. Again, if we're not able to regulate in response to these things. So, for example, we might catastrophize, we might generalize, we might go to binary thinking, we might overgeneralize. So because that one thing happened then, it means it's going to happen forever. We go either this talk was the most wonderful thing ever, or it was the worst thing ever, and I'm never destined for speaking in public again. Like our mind plays these tricks on us to distort reality, to move us back to, again, like you've said, safety, certainty, belonging. But again, it's also the path or the doors when they're there of this is the opportunity to stretch as long as again I can kind of regulate or come back to some level of safety. The other thing, just it's interesting to pick up on the language. So the vertical development thing is not just here. That's one of the capacities is cognitive. The other capacities are emotional, physiological, relational. So like there's lots of capacities that are part of some of that development as well. The mind we live in, so it's easy to understand and place models to explain it. The body is more chaotic and more wild. And so that's why I think a lot of the research doesn't touch it, or pays a little bit less attention to it. So the way I understand vertical development is not a status or a more, it's actually an inner, like understanding or seeking of wisdom that's connected to who we are and how we are in the moment. And so it's just, that was one of the kind of frames I heard on vertical development that I like, but part of me also wants to know, how do I get to later stages? Like, how do I get to alchemist and ironist? Because that seems later is better. But that model of hierarchy is not always the way with development. My son is 19 months old, and he's probably wiser than I am. But his level of sophistication at changing the tube on my bike is not there. So instead, the way that I kind of think about it is a bike compared to a car, depending if you want to admire the scenery and feel the fresh air on you, a bike might be better. The car is more sophisticated, but you'll probably still be able to drive on the same road. So they're just
Mhm.
different. They're not necessarily better. It depends what we try to do. And flexibility between those is the skill that I'm trying to develop for me and the people that I work with.
Yeah, and it's, I guess what I'm hearing is it's the ability to hold multiple complex points of view simultaneously, without
Mm.
judgment. And for me, you know, what I mean, vertical development is your emotional and cognitive ability. So that emotion and cognitive piece, and in the world that we operate in, Philip, you mean an organization will only grow to the emotional and cognitive ability of its leader or leadership team. And it's how we
Mm.
make meaning of the world around us, not
Hmm.
necessarily trying to learn more tools and kind of make the tool
Yes.
belt a lot heavier. So, really important stuff there. So, I mean, what do you see in how people think, feel, and behave then when the stakes rise?
Yeah, and I mean that's back to the toolbox thing as well. So that's the horizontal lens on development. Vertical
Mhm.
is how much, I guess, choice in the moment do we actually have, or how much access do we have to that range of toolbox. Um, but I mean, when the stakes rise, again, like our feelings default to ones that are based on survival. They're based on certainty and belonging, so they restrict somewhat what access or how we might come across. I mean, even in this kind of thing, like this is a little bit performative. I'm trying to regulate my nervous system live so that I can be connected and not go into who do I need to be to sound good or feel good or whatever. Like that's childhood nervous system stuff that plays out in these kind of conversations as well. So like
Mhm.
that changes what I think. Am I liked? Am I judged? Da 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 da. What I feel in this moment. And then how I behave or show up. Like, will I show up with compassion or will I just continue with the performance? Like, again, this is the same kind of thing. This is a simulation of real life pressure. And the other kind of distinction that I try to make with this stuff is leaders are humans. One of my coach supervisors has a book called A Jungian Approach to Coaching, Turning Leaders into Humans. And whenever we give them like leader as this box of you are a leader or you're not, I think we forget the human part of who they are and how to actually pay attention to or have compassion for that. So, like when the stakes rise, some of your performance might increase. Again, if we have no pressure, we're probably a little bit bored. And we talked about this before, I guess the conversation started. Like, it feels good to be in alignment and in flow. Without pressure or stress, you don't get into flow. It's too easy. It's not stretching your capabilities. But the other thing is, some of these things are relative. So my capacity for stress, for pressure, for stakes is very different for other people. Some people, the pressure rises when they think about leaving the house or having a conversation with somebody behind the counter. Their body will do exactly the same thing as mine in speaking to 1,000 people. So all that kind of stuff changes. Um, yeah, I don't know what comes up for you when you hear all of that in response to it.
Like, I mean, like, I guess we all see the world through a different lens, a byproduct of our whole life. And you mean the, the biggest unlock for me is being able to shine a light on those parts of my life and asking myself, am I trying to look good here?
Mm,
Or is this actually serving me? Or am I trying to solve a problem? Do you know what I mean? And what I'm, what, where I feel I'm at the minute, and I can really talk about myself, is that, I mean, we're all just looking in a mirror. Everything that we say and do is to fill a void in there, whether that's conscious or subconscious. Most of the time it's
Yes.
subconscious, you know what I mean? And as uncomfortable as it is, you know what I mean, why does a very, very, very small percentage of the adult population have a disposition when the shit hits the fan that they actually want to contribute and elevate others? Because
Mm,
most of us are afraid of what happens when you go back in time and do that hard work, probably due to a fear of failure, of some kind of fear of judgment, ultimately. You know
mm,
what I mean?
mhm,
So it's fascinating. And we can only pick each other up on where we are on our own different journeys. And
mhm,
try to suppress those judgments. And it's not about removing the thoughts. It's just recognizing that the thoughts are there and asking, um, what meaning am I taking from this? And then asking another question is, am I judging? Is it serving me? Et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I love that because it's not the thought that's good or bad. It's the story we give it that changes our experience of it. And do we identify or think that we are the thought? Or can we come back to, I'm the awareness of the thought, which gives you ultimate freedom because you can come back to choice. Because again, the thought reinforces who I think I am or what I need to do. Like if I see myself as a runner and I have the thoughts of running versus I'm a lazy person, same thoughts might occur, but our experience of it is totally different. Like you say, because of the meaning that we give it.
Yeah, you mean, like somebody hit me with this the other day. I mean, people are like countries, right? They've got their own borders, they've got their own language, their own cuisine, their own culture, their own laws, you name it. And,
Mm,
and, and we've got to, like, when I went through my purpose journey, one part of what I feel the world needs is more respect for other people. I mean, you don't
yeah.
have to go looking too far to see that there's a severe lack of respect for people. So when you bring those mindset kind of silos into the corporate world, 85% of leaders want to stand out, look good, and get ahead. And
Mm,
another way of actually looking at that is, what can I get out of this for me? Rather than how can I contribute, which is 7% of leaders. And
yeah.
that's really interesting
Could
because,
I pick up? Can I pick up on that as well? Because what I
yeah.
wonder as well is, like, we're also part of a system that I wonder, do people have the opportunity to actually do the things like contribute, or is the system incentivized or designed for those behaviors to be what we do?
And the big differentiator, Philip, from the work that I'm researching is that, you mean, child development's automatic,
Hmm.
adult development is intentional.
Mm,
So you have to want to go there.
mm,
That's the difference. Automatic between birth and approximately 20 years old. And then through your lived experience, you then have to choose to level up.
yeah,
And for most of us, it takes some kind of pain to be the trigger for that.
yeah,
And most of us, or most of the examples that I've seen, is when people level up, it's off the back of something that's nearly broke their heart. You know what I mean?
yeah. In
And
development, I've heard it called heat experiences. And so can you design almost crucibles for people to have to step beyond their like development or like way of seeing the world?
mhm.
Um, yeah, I love that.
Another point of view is that this type of topic is actually not that well known.
Mm,
So developmental psychology started around 1880. And in 1960 did developmental psychologists ask the question, do adults develop?
mhm.
And I believe that was led by Robert Keegan from Harvard University, who then obviously Ryan Godfredson's picked up that mantle. Um, and I'm really influenced by Robert and Ryan's work. So, like, this is relatively new stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess it's how do we have more of these conversations? How can we shine a light on this? Because I've no doubt that out of the 85% of leaders, there's still 10 or 15% of them that are curious about what change might do, but then those default patterns of fear, failure, fear, judgments holding them back. And it's
Mm.
that friction. Like when we've spoke over the last few years, I mean, there's days where I've clearly been exercised, and then there's days where I feel pretty relaxed, and vice
Mm.
versa. You know what I mean? So there's always a little bit of friction at times, and it's how you deal with those peaks and valleys, isn't it?
Yeah, and back to the kind of doing being distinction. It's like the fly story from U squared. Like the
Mm,
fly is busy, caught under the illusion if I try harder by doing more, I'll achieve the outcome of getting out the window, versus pausing long enough to be and see that there's an open door. Um, I think the system reinforces us to do, and so we don't have the time or space or capacity to actually pause and question I mean, is this aliveness? Is this what life is
absolutely,
about?
totally. So can we talk about kind of inner capacity and outer performance? So
Mm.
most leaders focus on what they do. You focus on who they are, and why does that matter, Philip? In your opinion?
Yeah, it's like I know I shouldn't eat as much chocolate as I do, right?
But you do it.
I know, and I behave. So, like again, it's back to like none of this is non us. It's us, uh, and so the outer performance is, let's just call it behavior. Like it is dependent on how we make sense of the moment in front of us and how we choose to show up to it. Do I want to align with an identity or a who I think I am? Like I'm disciplined or I'm not that kind of person that eats chocolate? Or am I lost in what my body is just craving, which is just relief from hunger? Just to give it a silly, that kind of chocolate example, right? Um, but I think the more we identify strongly with containers or beliefs or identity statements. So, for example, I'm not that type of person. I could never do that. Okay, you get that to be true. If you disidentify with some of those things, like anything is possible, to go 10.0, like I'm pure awareness, all of this is just sensation. Let me move through the world and pay attention to all of it. That changes completely what's possible and how I move towards the same thing. Like if we get curious about the containers we've created around our way of experiencing the world, everything opens up to us, including ourselves. And so I just want more people to experience the kind of liberation of that, because I think then we show up very differently in the work that we do and how we treat other people and how we treat ourselves in the system that we're in as well. So
Mhm.
I mean, some of the symbols that have shown up in some of the work that I've done with coaching conversations, like I feel like a slug contained by this lunchbox that's around me, or I'm like a bumblebee in a lunchbox. I'm just bumping up against the edges, but I know that there's this world beyond this. Like w- that's not a doing. That's not a thing that you need to do differently. That's a way of seeing the constraints differently and dissolving them or growing through them in different ways. If we don't do that, we just reinforce the container. Um, that was a little bit jumbled. Um,
No, I mean, I get it. Like we talked briefly about purpose, and I don't want to sound cliche, but um, it was Damien Hughes had mentioned a phrase which I love: is confidence is built on evidence.
mm,
And a lot of us are waiting for motivation, but motivation only comes after action.
mm,
Um, so I mean, in my particular journey, it was the ikigai process. You mean, what do you love? What are you good at? What the world needs now? Ikigai. What I learned recently, Philip, was that the what can I get paid for was a Western bolt-on. Um, but when you go on that journey and give it the time that it deserves, you can then start to really land on the stuff that lights you up.
yes.
But you've got to give it the space. And this is what I'm finding is that, you mean, coaches stop at clarity and consultants don't do the inner work. And there's a very small group of people out there that actually combine the both. Do you know what I mean? Um, So yeah, it's so important to really get clear with what tops you up, because then you're starting to build the evidence that gives you the confidence that you're moving in the right direction. So in those dark Wednesdays in the middle of November, when you're questioning everything, which will ultimately happen, you can go back and go, actually, hold on a minute here. I'm in the right space. And more importantly, they become filters. I mean, you've heard the signal and the noise. Like, what are the 2 or 3 levers that's going to exponentially increase my impact, my purpose, versus the 10 or 20 levers, which most are just noise? So creating space and actually going on that journey to get clear on what that is and looking at it and pointing at it. For me, it's especially has been, it hasn't been straightforward, but it compounds every day because I'm now moving forward with the clarity and the intention. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I ask a question about that, or
Of
like
course you can.
share?
Yeah.
Because again, what I heard is the word space, and I always say space, not pace. And the reason for that is, again, if we're doing an under pressure, but like becoming jaded by it, again, we feel like that fly that thinks I need to try harder to do more to get to where I need to get to, or to get the clarity, but actually it's the space. And that's a totally different nervous system response to the same thing. And in times of pressure, our mind discounts any positives about us or our experience, and we can't even find the evidence within ourselves. We think we're showing up to this challenge or situation without any of that stuff. But in that space and kind of honoring the journey or the experience, we're more likely to encounter both the positive of our experience and some of the areas we could develop. So it's more whole, it's more holistic. So I heard that in what you said as well, that again, like the collecting of evidence in pressure is probably going to be more negative and lower the confidence we use to move into the next moment, versus slowing down and stepping away and finding that space, or allowing yourself that space. Because sometimes it's a permission thing, it's not a calendar thing.
Absolutely. And you mean, in my experience, once you get really clear on what you stand for, and more importantly, what you don't stand for, right?
Mm,
When you come to that T junction for the 20th time, instead of taking instead of going left, which is your default, you
mm.
go, feck this, I'm going right.
Yes.
And last
You
September,
recognize that choice.
yeah, but you have to. The point is that like, I never give advice in my work. I believe that the minute you give somebody advice, Philip, subconscious puts a wall around you.
Yeah.
We've got to facilitate a space that holds a mirror up and pokes and prods at those underlying psychological tensions until the individual makes the choice themselves.
Mm.
So our role, my role, is, you mean, I kind of describe it like a bobsleigh track. Have you ever watched Cool Runnings?
Yeah.
The first time they hit the ice, John Candy pushes them off the top with one finger. But by the time they get down the bottom, they're going through the flipping finish line at 70 miles an hour. So, you mean, for the work that we do, I do, it's like, let's start slowly. There's still a
Yeah.
few little guardrails there. But by the time
Yes.
you get to the end of whatever this period of time happens to be, and there's no definition of what that is either, you will have the clarity and the intention and the momentum that you're moving in the right direction. And that's
Yeah.
the difference. But it
Yeah.
takes time, and having no expectation on that is so important, because when you have expectations, you're either going to be surprised or you're going to be let down. And
Mhm.
nobody likes surprises unless it's Christmas or your birthday.
Yeah, the surprises we want.
Andrew, have you any questions that you want to maybe ask Philip at this stage based on what you've heard?
No, no, I'm just finding it very, very interesting, and to listen to you two guys sort of going sort of in that interchange between the two of you on all these different topics. I was interested in, David, in your research, and how particularly where you started in terms of how such a small proportion of adults actually develop beyond that sort of childlike state, and sort of, I suppose that's where I've seen it, and I suppose I reflect, and I did some reflection with Philip some time ago, in terms of where I am and what I am now. Obviously, I'm probably a lot older than you two guys. So sort of having got to the stage I'm at, and reflecting on what I can add to other people, you know. But yeah, so interesting. I thought that was interesting, and then obviously what Philip's talking about in terms of that linkage between the physiology of it and the mindset and so on is all very, very fascinating.
It is fascinating, and you mean, like the last time we met, Philip, I mean, you've this incredible, you're going through this incredible phase where you've got a child who's under 7 or 8 years old, and the only two fears that we're born with is the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises, and everything else is taught. So your kids just absorbing the world and what you're saying, and also what you're not saying. And what will happen is they'll hit 7 or 8 years old, and something will happen, and that will then become the autopilot for the foreseeable future. And when I look at the kind of the circles that we kind of work within, like there are some, and like there's Ross, his mindset is just everything's on the table until we decide to take it off, and he's 25 years old. And that is like, I only started this flipping process of my journey at 41. Do you know what I mean? So it's the earlier you can support people and shine a light on this stuff. Like, can you imagine the life that you can have for those people and the people around you? You know what I mean? It's just incredibly powerful. And I think that's the drive in me, all from lived experience, because I have bumped off the bottom a few times, and I just don't want to go back there anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same. Your voice become your values, isn't that a phrase?
Yeah. Like I remember having a bit of time with John DeMartini when Seamus brought him to Belfast. And there's a wee bit of feedback here, Andrew. I'm going to mute you again if you don't mind. Is that okay?
No, absolutely.
And can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I asked him a question. I says, John, I'm a chronic overthinker. And I've always went through life with a label that overthinking is a disadvantage. And his response kind of blew my socks off. He says, David, your overthinking is your body telling you that you haven't got all the information yet. And that one sentence just completely disarmed years and years and years and years and years of what I thought an overthinking mind did.
Yeah.
So now I lean into overthinking as actually, hey, what am I not seeing here? What am I missing? And sitting with it and giving myself permission to sit with it. Because most of us are just running at 100 miles an hour with no real thoughts or feelings about the world around us. Like every time I'm now out in town, I remember, you told me about, instead of walking down the street, visualize the street coming past you. Still can't get that out of my head, Philip.
Wild. Test it as an experiment.
No, all the time. Like I'm not walking down the street. The street's coming to me.
Yes.
Or the trees are coming to me, or the path's coming to me. It's incredible. So those, what am I trying to say is that those little one-liners just stay with you for the rest of your life. You know what I mean?
And what I heard there as well was almost like a settling for you that the overthinking isn't bad. It's actually a strength. And I wonder what the felt experience of that sentence, because that's the unlock as well, as I am safe with this thing. So now it can settle and leverage it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think it's acceptance.
Yes.
That it's acceptance that none of us have this figured out. Like Tasha Ulrich is I was introduced to Tasha Ulrich through Ryan Gofferson. She wrote a book called Shatterproof. So she would be, her research, I think she's a PhD in self-awareness. And another stat that I read in her book was that like 85 to 90% of adults believe that they're self-aware, but only 5 to 10% of them show the traits of self-awareness. And being self-aware and having the traits of self-awareness are still two different definitions. Do you know what I mean? So everywhere you look, whether it's businesses that scale, vertical development, mindset, self-awareness. Like, it's a very, very small group of people that actually get there. And most of it is off the back of, as we said earlier on, sort of pain or heat.
Yeah.
Can we move on to regulation then versus awareness? So you talk about nervous system regulation. In your opinion, why is that so critical for leadership, Philip?
So, because the leader creates the nervous system of the organization. If you're in a calm, regulated, connected state, the impact you have around you is profound. The organization feels different. You get more capacity, capability within the individuals around you and yourself, and that scales. So your ability as a leader to be the nervous system of the organization or hold and be the like culture carrier almost, it maybe like happy to be wrong, but I think that that's true. I mean, the leader of the organization, their nervous system or their like energy without it being the woo woo type of energy, like it's contagious. We can feel it. We can feel when you've had a good weekend. We can feel when you're showing up frustrated and angry. That scales. If you're showing up frustrated and angry, the organization will feel very different. Go to safety certainty, not take risks, be less innovative, go to whatever the thing is that we've always done. The other thing is like that sounds like it's one way. It's also two way. One of the phrases I love is that leaders hold the anxiety of the organization. So whenever there's change, there's anxiety, normal reaction. We can resist it, create anxiety because it's an unknown thing. Your ability to hold that as a leader is human. You're one human. And so your ability to again regulate or make sense of or hold that anxiety, and again, like you said earlier on or just a second ago, but accepting it. Can I accept it within me means I can accept it out there in the organization as well. And that makes a profound difference in the relationship. Now it's more dynamic. It's not a you must be a certain way before I'll be okay with you. No, I'm okay with everything that happens, and we can move through this. The resistance is normal, all that kind of stuff. Our ability to regulate, I think, is one of the superpowers that I think will become more important in the future, but it's also deeply personal. So, safety to some people feels like chaos and activity. Safety to other people means the forest and nature and walking in stillness. So, like, again, we have to tune into what's our version of regulation. What do I need in this moment? And that's again about tuning into not here, down here. What's going on in my system and what do I need right now? For some people, it's just, I need to go to the toilet. I can't listen to you because my bladder is full. Like sometimes it's that simple. If you're back to back all day, have you eaten? Have you drank a glass of water? Have you gone to the bathroom? Have you been hugged? Like we're mammals. We need connection and touch. Like sometimes it's inappropriate in a workplace, but like we're built for being connected to people.
No,
Where are we getting
100%.
that?
And how can somebody recognize when they're dysregulated in real time?
I think it's back to mind and body. So it'll show up in the mind with some of those kind of cognitive distortions, catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, distorting, like binary thinking, taking things personally, all this kind of stuff. The emotions, again, are some of those kind of things like anger, frustration, anxiety, despair, disappointment, those kind of things. They're probably a signal that some regulation or stillness is needed. And then we can kind of cultivate the opposite side, which would be excitement, joy, contentment, connection, like purpose, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's individual. I haven't found somebody that has the same map as me. And I think it's just, again, a case of can I tune into myself in this moment and what do I need? Yeah, I think it's personal.
Yeah, and like if we could just go beneath the surface, then. So, I mean, you have a way of slowing conversations down, Philip. You mean, and why do you think that's so important?
Well, you said a few minutes ago, we're all running at 100 miles an hour, not thinking, feeling, or just doing. Like, if we don't slow down, we just continue on the path that we're on. And if we scale it to the world, I don't think the direction that we're on is useful for the planet. Capitalism is built on extraction, maximum, atomizing individuals, not connecting them, all that kind of stuff. So if that's the 10.0 in direction of travel, we have to slow down to realize we have a choice to choose towards life, or like whatever the capitalistic like detachment from life is. And I want more people to choose life.
Mhm.
And I think one of the ways to do that is to come into nature so that we realize we are nature and act towards that a little bit more. So, I mean, I walk a lot of the people that I work with through forests. I'm trying to plant as many trees as I can before I die, because I think the more we bump into nature, I mean, the stats around forests or trees in urban areas reduces crime by something like 70%. And that's
Wow.
because it's a signal to our nervous system. I don't have to be in a threat state. I'm connected, I'm safe. So there's less anger, anxiety, da 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 da. So we're less likely to act out or commit crime. Like wild, but we're so disconnected that we can't even notice that. I mean, I'm disconnected. I've been on this journey from head to heart. Like I know this stuff intimately because I'm living it. And I'm trying to connect back to life rather than just existing up here and just experiencing like an idea of life. It's the
So
same stuff.
what's that behavior that sits? Sorry, what tends to sit beneath the behaviors that you see then?
Maybe say more.
So what are leaders missing when they stay at that surface level? And then what tends to sit beneath the behaviors that you see?
Like suffering. If we stay at the level that we are, not just for us, but for the people that we interact with.
Mhm.
Suffering in different ways. And what's sitting below that, again, you said earlier on about expectations versus reality. We can either be pleasantly surprised or wildly disappointed, depending on whether reality can meet our expectations or not. Leaders have expectations, but they don't even know where they've come from. Oh, my expectation on you to be perfect is because I have an expectation on me to be perfect because I don't want to be disappointing to my father.
Yeah.
Like we can stay surface level and act out that behavior, or we can slow down enough to examine where it came from and if it's useful or helpful to carry forward.
So one of the exercises that I would take groups of people through is really understanding what are those underlying commitments that are driving the aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
So we start with the aspiration. So for me, my aspiration is that I want to be a more congruent, free leader that doesn't really give a fiddlers about what other people think about me. So that's the driver. Then there's things that I'm doing which metaphorically hold the handbrake up, and there's things that I'm not doing that metaphorically hold the handbrake up. So then what we've got to ask ourselves is, why are we doing that? What fear are we trying to avoid?
Mm-hmm.
And what are those commitments that are actually driving our decision making? So the way I describe that is the aspiration is the accelerator pedal and the commitment is putting the brake on at the same time. So that's where most leadership coaching stops. They'll identify what you got to work on. So then we've got to take it a step further. This is where we then identify that if then statement. So I'll give you my example, Philip. I'm no problems talking about it. So my if then statement is, if I focus on my work, then I will operate at an unhealthy rate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I procrastinate, I overthink, you know what I mean? I don't focus on my work because I think I'm going to operate at an unhealthy rate. And believe it or not, I've got the evidence that gives me the confidence that that if then statement is actually pretty accurate, right? So then what we've got to do is go down a step further and start building real world experiments that start testing those underlying if then statements. So if you can imagine that an individual might have one assumption, but maybe 15 or 20 commitments that are driving that assumption. And each one of those commitments then has an if then statement that they then need to test in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So with working with Ryan, what do? We take a group of people And we do a very comprehensive mindset assessment to see the starting point. We don't look at their individual reports, we aggregate the leadership team. And then we deliver the program. And then there's 6 months of asynchronous coaching where we then build in those real world experiments and start reprogramming the brain ever so slowly, because this thing takes a while, as we all know. And then we retest again in the future. And what we're looking for is, and it doesn't need to be an exponential move to the right, but we just want to see that the direction of travel is that the mindsets are moving away from a prevention towards a promotion, or away from a fix towards a growth. Or do you get my drift? And that is really, really fascinating. But that exercise of understanding the aspirations, the handbrakes, the commitments, and what I've learned is you've got to care slightly less about the outcome in order to move towards it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So caring slightly less,
yes,
will allow you to move toward. Now that's a bit of a mind meld in my head, but I get it. And when we spoke at the start of this conversation about, like, all my fears are still there, but they're motivating the hell out of me. They're not debilitating me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm choosing to care slightly less about the stuff that's been holding me back in the past. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, I don't think
Does
your
that
fears
resonate?
ever go. I think you
No.
experience them differently. So it sounds like you're using the same thing, but your response to it is different.
But that's a series of micro habits
Yes, and evidence
and
that you're
evidence
collecting.
and the right people around me, of course. Right. Let's move on. We've a few minutes left. I've got 2 more short questions. We'll see if Andrew wants to ask any more questions, and then we'll close it out. So if somebody on this call wants to start this work with you, Philip, where should they begin?
Wherever you're afraid, whatever negative emotion you experience, or whatever positive emotion you want to feel more of. So, for example, I want to feel more joy and excitement in my work. So whenever it shows up, like, get curious. What's going on there? What's in the way, or what's veiling it from being your experience more often? Like, again, it's curiosity, and then run experiments. Like, I love that you brought that word in. One of my mentors says exactly the same thing. Like, again, we exist in a world that either pass or fail, versus experimentation has built-in failure. It is to learn, not to perfect. But over time, with enough experiments and evidence of what's working or not, we can iterate and adapt. So it's also like, just create experiments for yourself. For example, what's the thing you don't think you could do? Test it. I don't think I could be a public speaker. Okay, test it. What do you experience? How is your experience? Like, I think I love one of my mentors. I'm actually spending next week in England with him. He's running the coaching program on this kind of vertical development stuff that I've been on for a year, and like, I love the stuff, and I've looked at it for a long time, and I like how this guy makes sense of it. And he says, like, development can be accidental. Like, sometimes we plan out what development looks and feels like. What if we just had more accidents, as in bumped into the world more? I've a habit of overthinking and stepping away from the world. And so what I'm trying to get curious of is, how can I get bruised by the world a little bit more? So maybe it's something like that. It's just notice what your default is, just experiment towards the opposite. Looking after yourself along the way, because you don't want to just, like, masochistically be horrible to yourself. They're just experiments. The other is, like, if you are new to this kind of stuff, like, I would say, like, join communities that are doing it too, because outside perspectives are sometimes more valuable than your own story. And the shame or the negative versions of these experiences that you could hold that you don't want to share, they'll become heavier or more weighted. So one of the most profound things developmentally for me, over the last maybe year or two, has been part of a community where we share openly all of our experiences without judgment. It's not therapy, but it's just about self-understanding. And having that kind of space where you can do that is really unusual for people to experience. And it's been profound for me. And the other is just find somebody slightly further up the path or with more ignorant questions than you might think are useful. Like spend time with people that just ask you silly things and see where you come up with. And then it's just don't close off from life. Life is for experiencing, and that's the full range. It won't be joy and happiness all the time. It's also anger and frustration and anxiety and despair and depression. Like all of that is evidence of aliveness. It's not it must look a certain way. Don't have that expectation. All of this is the work. Everything that shows up is the work. How can you greet it? Can you greet it with acceptance and love, or judgment and fear? Are you going to move through it or move away from it? Like that's all part of the same thing. You know what the thing is. You'll always know what the thing is. There's probably a decision you're holding that if you made it would create more of this stuff for you.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Andrew, do you want to unmute yourself? And if you've anything you want to add, ask Philip some questions. You can ask me a question if you want. I might not know the answer though.
Same.
That was again very, very interesting. I suppose I empathise with Philip's statement early on in that second session around leaders being the culture carriers of organisations, and is always a big thing for me in the 40 years I was doing that sort of thing, and and leaders just don't get it. So many leaders don't. I wonder actually now if leaders do get it a bit more, because culture and so on is more of a thing than maybe it was 20 years ago. I don't know, and that holding the anxiety of the organisation and how they carry that and how they maybe withhold it from others, I think is so important. And then just on the last points from Philip around real life, and that it's not all joy, and it's not meant to be. It's meant to be a whole raft of stuff, and it's how you live it and how you accept it. And so I thought again that was interesting. Again, actually, I came across something on LinkedIn this morning where a quote, find it. Joy is a natural phenomenon. Misery is your creation. And again, it just felt that resonated so much with me, and I've come across that sort of thinking probably through Philip and others over the last few years. It's just how you live your life, and you can be anxious if you can take on all the worries of the world and so on, be anxious if you want to, but you've got a choice in many respects, because life is just is meant to have lots of bumps in the road. That's just the way it is.
Absolutely. Okay, so like leadership is tested when things aren't going well. It's revealed under pressure. And today was a reminder that how we show up in those moments is not random. It's a reflection of what's happening beneath the surface. Philip, thank you so much. I love these conversations. I'm looking forward to our next coffee. And I really, really, really appreciate your time. And thank you, Andrew, for taking the time to turn up today.
I enjoyed it. Fantastic.
Yeah, much love.
Take care, everyone. See you soon.